another edition of on allpointstv.com, what's going on, and we're glad you're out there. Thank you for staying tuned for another week, another edition of our program. And we are elated that you're here. And we're going to try to, let's see what we're going to try to do today. We always try to do something. We'll let you know what we're trying to do when we finish. Sometimes we'll have an idea in mind, and as we get into the program, we develop other ideas along the way, and we start to, I guess, we start to divert our own attention away from what we're trying to do. But we're glad you're here, and we're going to do some things here that nobody else is doing. I can guarantee that to be true, and something that's very original. I don't think anybody even Newsmax. My favorite station today is Newsmax. And I don't think even Newsmax is going to match what we're going to do here today at the studio. And if they do, then they're already doing a remarkable job. They're challenging Fox for one thing, and Fox, you're not going to be able to stay out there as a conservative station. If you keep doing what you're doing right now, you're going to be replaced. I think you're still number one conservative station, but you're being hijacked by those children of Murdoch, and they're carrying a little bit different water in their bucket than what was being carried by the father, who's a little bit more conservative than they are, and they're bringing up all this programming now that reminds me more than anything else of what I can get on MSNBC. And it's like if you want to lose me as a viewer, you start talking like you're part of the View, and I'll tell you right now, you've lost my interest, because I can understand about five. I may see the View on my way to some other station. I may be switching, and you're going through the stations and you're trying to find a program you want to watch. And I don't watch a lot of them, but once in a while I stumble on at the time the View is on, and after about two minutes of that, I'm ready to move off from that for the rest of the week, at least rest of the week, maybe for the whole month, because you talking about some craziness over there. But if you keep doing what you're doing, Fox, with your programming, I can watch a few of your programs, but I'll tell you, you begin to me, and I'm speaking off the cuff here as if this is the idea from the mountaintop. But my view of it is that you're becoming a lot more of a liberal station, and that's now how you grew your network. We were looking for an alternative to MSNBC and CNN. That's the beginning point, CNN. And now, I don't know why people think they have to move back toward that corridor of media understandings, because that's what created the offshoots. If CNN had them at one time, they were the only ones out there. They were the ones that were the cutting edge of this all night. When I was coming up, the TV stations went off at 12 o'clock. They had the airplanes flying and the flag waving and so on. And at 12, it was like the day was over. And they had a sign-off part. But then CNN started doing programming, and you start seeing news. Who could have thought you're going to see news all day long, and then a repeat of the news and news stations throughout the night? It never goes. It never goes off the air, and that wasn't true when I was coming up, because if you had people don't know this, but you had news at one time was 15 minutes, and after 15 minutes, because people want you, cowboy pictures and stuff like that, and people want to see action, and here's a person sitting in a chair, and they're not down with that too much, and so the news was about 15 minutes. Lady couldn't even do a 30-minute program until the civil rights movement. And then that was kind of like an action-packed type of thing. People on horses and dogs in there. There's Ren 1010. A lot of TV program became the news became an action program because they were showing you pictures of action events, and then it became 30 minutes. And look at it now. Look at what it is right now. But I'm telling you that Fox better watch his back because Newsmax is coming strong, and don't forget us here at allpointstv.com because we're making some noise. We're not making all the noise we're gonna make, and we're just getting started. I've been here 12 years or so, but the fact is that we're being found out, especially by the power brokers. Let me tell you something that I never said on the air before. I left writing on Facebook for 2 years. I just decided that I was going to go on and do what I was doing. I could read my books and just get more information by just reading, having interaction with authors and things of that sort. And I left the network for 2 years. I guess I kind of just was not going to allow my post to be to be monitored by the people behind Facebook, because Facebook is like all the other networks. In the back of those networks, you have the intelligence community, and they are watching what is written and things of that sort. I didn't tell you when I left for 2 years, I just walked away. Then there was a person out in Arizona, in Kingston, Arizona, who wrote me after about maybe 2 or 3 months I was off the air on Facebook. He wrote me, and we had an exchange, and I was going to my timeshare in Las Vegas, and he found I was coming to Las Vegas, and he said, "Well, look, Kingston's only 90 miles from there. Why don't you, when you come to Vegas this summer, why don't you drive another 90 miles and visit me in Kingston?" And I did that, and we talked while I was there. I had a very good time. I was there 3 days. He showed me the Wild West. I saw a lot of the West right there. I didn't know the Jingles came. Jingles, remember them from Wild Bill Hickok starring James Madison. I didn't know he was from there. And I went there to Kingston. And I was really I was just amazed at what I learned while I was there. And I met some great people. I met some of the greatest people I've ever met in Kingston. Thank you for inviting me down there, Don. I won't call his last name out. I don't want to start getting tarred and feathered in the city. He invited me to his home, and I definitely appreciated that. We became very good friends, and we're still in contact with each other. He sent me a Christmas thing. I got to make sure I return that. A couple people have written me and wished me a nice Christmas. But when I was there, we were talking, and he said he just convinced me to get back on the air, and I promised when I got back to Flint, which is where I'm from, that I would get back on the air. And getting back on the air, having been gone 2 years, Facebook all of a sudden wants me in order to get back on the air. I had to send them a picture. Like, I don't know what this is about. They want to make sure the picture now. This is what they said in the communication. They wanted a picture of me, a front view of a picture of me. They didn't want it from the side. They wanted me to take a shot directly, so the camera gets me right here where I am right now. And I knew what that's about. They want to know because they knew when I left, and they knew when I tried to come back, they had my name in some kind of a file. I mean, we were living in a surveillance state. I know that for a fact. And they wanted me to take a picture of myself and send that to them before they let it back on the air. And I'll accommodate them. I mean, I'll do that. I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm not trying to hide from anybody. And I know the Constitution better than they do. So Why should I be doing the one? Why should I be the one doing the hiding? And they are here in Front Street, and they are the ones doing the violations of our constitutional. We live under the Constitution in this country. We're supposed to be living under the Constitution in this country, and why am I hiding out from it when I know the document better than anybody else in the country? And people don't believe that when I say it because they don't believe that you can have the credentials that I have from places where I have these credentials and be that person that's out there. But I listen to them and they listen to what I'm talking about as well. They know I'm out here, and 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 they know if they know anything, they know they're not on this level. I'm just going to tell them if they don't know. I'm just going to tell them outright that they're not. But they wanted me to send them a picture and take it this way and make sure the camera is getting a shot of you directly and so on. They all these requirements before they let me back on Facebook. I never said it on the air before. That's what they required of me to get back on there, and that's when I knew that I already knew it. But that's when I really knew that they were very much aware of George W. Moss out here because they're not requiring it of everybody. But I will tell you when they see what I'm writing, and then I write every day. I didn't know they also I didn't know that they were censoring me not by taking what I'm writing off the screen. They do that a lot of times too, but they don't. I have a backup plan of doing right now to stop that. So when they do that, I try to show them that I'm already prepared for that. The one time I didn't prepare for it, the one time I didn't do it, they went and erased off the screen, and I had to sit there fuming over it because I had let my guard down. And, and I don't let my guard down now anymore because I plan to thwart them in terms of their. See, they have an agenda, and I have an agenda also, and our agendas will never meet, would always clash because I'm never going to be on their side, and they know that, and they know who I am, and I know, and more importantly, I know who they are, and they know I know who they are, and I know that I'm not going to surrender. So that we we are in that little. Uh, you see that little town, that little. I've been in that little town. When I was in Kingston, I was in that little town where they did a lot of those cowboy pictures, where that little alley when they robbed the bank, they ride down that little street, and there was a guy coming running out behind them. The guy they didn't rob the bank, and he's riding out, and he's shooting at him, trying to shoot him in the back as to run away with the money. I've been in that I've seen that section there. Jingles, that was some of your that's your town. You may not recall Jingles, but that was when I was coming up. That was the cowboy pictures and so on and so forth. But they put that on the air on news, and now you can do news all day and so on because the news is no longer this static. That's the way it is, and it's a lot of action that goes on the news, and everything right now locally that if it bleeds, it leads, and so they want the action, and because you're sitting in a chair, you're very passive in terms of your reporting. But what the reporting is where the action is located, and so they want to do a cutaway as quickly as they can and get away from them and get it off of them and get it into the action part of the program to attract the viewers. And now the news is an action packed. If you watch it very carefully right now, you'll see it's action packed. But I'm telling Fox, you all better tighten your game up because there's an upstart network over there on the other. Let's see, you're on my network. I'm on this network. I'm not trying to advertise for them, so I'm not going to call out the one that I use. But that network, the station for Fox is 360, and then the network for Fox for Newsmax is 349. So I can, on my way to getting there, because I'm going down to see what else is on and so on. But I'm taping programs that I want to watch eventually. But I will. every once in a while I'll be stopping off at different places to see what's going on. And then if I hit anywhere close to where the view is, I know that's going to be a very brief visit in terms of just going through the network, finding what's on, because I can't that I don't have time to be watching this nonsense. And if you put on there, if you have people like Jasmine Crockett on there and and uh, and Kareem Jeffries, you put them on the air, you can tell. I can tell you right now, you already told me to get off your network and go somewhere else because I'm not watching these nuts. And I don't know where she thinks she's going. I think she's out of the limelight in the next election because she got to run for the senatorial position in Texas. Because when they did the gerrymandering, which was approved by the court, I got to talk about that one day. Got to have a topic on that. The court being intervening in all these different areas they shouldn't be involved in, and they're supposed to be interpreting a law interpreting body, and they are in here interfering in commerce. I got to tell some about the Constitution of the United States and let you understand it a little bit better than you do, since you're sitting there tolerating this. And I don't know exactly when we're going to get around this idea that the president can be ordered around by the courts. It doesn't matter what level the court is dealing with ordering him around, they can do it. And I want to know what basis of what language in the Constitution that I have not read that they can show me where that can be done under the Constitution of the United States. And I can tell you, they're not going to be able to show it to me. But I challenge them to show it because obviously they think it's there because they don't say anything about it. He didn't order the president around as they're doing. But I'm just, I'm back on the air. I do my post every day on Facebook. I'm doing, I just finished a part 2 yesterday. Let's see, did I finish? Yeah, I finished part 2. No, I started part 1 of another post yesterday. I'm doing part 2 today. I did part 2 today, and I'll be finishing up tomorrow. But part 2 is dealing with my topic today here at the studio, and the studio topic is this the thing that we've got to put into a context. I'm talking here about what happened in 1963 in Dallas. And I've been thinking about this for quite a while in terms of, here's what I was thinking about. How would those that are up here as the puppeteers, how would they want us to see these events? And I certainly asked that question as I was reading this book I was telling you about last week. I was asking that question as I went through this book by, I told you it was written by Kevin Kruse, Kruse, the major writer of this book called Myth America. I finished that book. I told you I was going to finish it between, it was on page 106 or so last week, and I finished it up, and I suffered myself the consequence of going through that noise. A lot of the noise was made in that book, but there are some caveats in there as well, and I found some nuggets I could use. A lot of it, I had to just suffer the consequences of that. But I tell you what I came away with though, because I was reading that book, particularly as I got to the very end of it, where they were trying to tell me, Kruse has a very good chapter in there. There's a lot of different writers. It's like a lot of different writers that are there. They're 2 editors of the book, but the ones that are actually writing the articles in the book, these are different ones writing it, but they are writing it from the same point of view. And I had to continue to go through it because I did find I read this, read that, and I'd say, not that's ridiculous. But I come then I get another article, and the next one I read, and there was something in there I could actually digest, and I knew from my own reading from a lot of other sources that this has some creds to it, and that didn't have any creds to it. And I was able to disaggravate the nonsense and the noise from the truth and from some of the facts. When you start telling me stuff like the book ends with um, this guy writing one of the chapters was written about the election of 2020, and they're going to try to tell me that the people that were making these statements about the election 2020 being taken from Donald Trump, and how that is total nonsense. I have to take that with a grain of salt. But this is what it made me aware of. It made me aware of the fact that that I know I was doing, and I was seeing the useful idiots. We say the useful idiots. To take advantage of the useful idiots. The problem was that I was seeing the useful idiots as those that were idiots. But the useful idiots are not. That's not necessarily the idiot. I mean, they are they are useless. See, that's useless idiots too. The useless idiots are the ones that they're making the most. That's where most idiots are. Those that are misinformed. Those are the useless idiots. But the useful idiots are the ones that are informed, because they're the ones that can do the most damage, because they do have an informed point of view, and they do have some information, and to me, that makes them more dangerous. But Kevin Cruz, the major editor of the book Myth America, is a very smart leftist. He's very smart. You can tell that by what he wrote. But those are the ones that are. When you start telling me what he was saying in his writing in that book about how ridiculous it is to challenge a man who has already been proven he couldn't run the country. If he can't run the country, how is he running an election that can take an incumbent president out that had been authenticated in the office of the presidency for 4 years by doing a job that persons commended him for to the tune of 12 million additional votes? How many times have I seen that happen when I read American history? How many times in American history have I read where that went on? Of all these one-term presidents who got in there and they were not up to the task according to what the people saw them doing, and they voted them out in the following election. And even when you have Eisenhower ran, I mean, they were saying I like Ike, and he ran in 52 and then ran again in 56. Look at what happened. They liked Ike. Look at his numbers. And did they like him enough to reward him with 12 million additional votes after he'd been in there for 4 years? Go and look at his numbers. The greatest president we've had. Go look at George Washington's numbers. Go look at his numbers in the first election they ran in, and look at the election that he ran in the second term that he served. Look at the numbers. He's still the most popular person in the country at that point. But look at his numbers going down, because even the greatest president we produced in this country, by far, people are evaluating you while you're in office, and they're evaluating you based on the expectation. And there's such an aura around Washington that they were looking at. They were looking at Washington to do that which is impossible for any one person to do, and that is to run a country based upon a circumstance that nobody can meet, because no person can do the things that they all of a sudden expected George Washington to do, because George Washington was almost like pulling rabbits out of hats with the things he was doing, because Washington was one of those persons that was able to do things, and thank you, I appreciate that, doing things that were totally beyond the pale because the things he was doing nobody ever done before. They never seen anybody do things Washington was doing, and this man was doing the equivalent of pulling rabbits out of hats. Some things that he was doing, and in fact, creating the office, which had never existed before on the earth, a president of a country. When have we heard that before? And that's Washington doing that. But look at his numbers in terms of how the votes were in his first running. He was unanimously elected by the Electoral College both times. But look at his popular votes in those two elections. And that would tell you the difficulty of increasing your numbers once you're in office, because by the time you have been there 4 years, people the expectations are something too. Now you have to overcome, and you could be doing a good job, but they're expecting, if you do a good job the first 4 years, they're expecting almost like a miracle, walk on water type of presidency. Uh, so you could be doing a good job, and then look at the criticism that you're getting as a result of that, because they've escalated their expectations, and now you got to almost walk on water to please anybody, and it's because you did a good job. It's like a it's like uh, a dilemma. You did a good job, and therefore the expectations of that are not on the same keel as it was as you were doing a good job. Then they expected you to do something on an even higher level, and that's what happened to Washington. Washington was practically walking on water, and they had written they expected him to be just the way he handled power. They had never seen that before, and they expected him to be self-sacrificing in all realms. And I'm not making him an angel. I mean, that's a human being we had in there, but this man was unusual in terms of his relationship to power, because this man had stepped down from it twice, and there were people actually begging him practically to they wanted the calmness of his leadership, because they knew, based on what he had done while he was a general. I mean, look at what he did when those look, you got to pay your soldiers, and when they out there fighting this war, and you talking about they're risking their life, and you talking about you don't have the money to pay them, out there bleeding, and you don't have the money to pay them. I want you to be very careful with that. Look in Benin is another example of it. Be very careful when your military is out there doing the sacrificial things in order to bring a result about that all of you agree with in power. You back there behind the scenes benefiting from it. You're the beneficiaries of the blood, sweat, and tears, but you're not out there doing the blood shedding and tears. You're not doing the bloodletting. And when they rose up to deal with that in Washington's day, and they were actually grumbling and meeting, as a matter of fact, this is not written in the textbooks, but I tell you, you go ahead and read it. You can read it. You got to do some digging, but you can read it. They were meeting, and look at what Washington did. Washington went down there with all of his creds and talked to them, and they're grumbling, and they're ready to go down there and take some heads and so on and so forth with the military. And this is abusive. I mean, you're not doing to them what you're doing to these veterans now. Go look at how these veterans out here begging. Man, I tell you, you talking about getting your dandruff up. People got limbs missing out there begging for the government to take care of those who are out there putting their life on the line, because, listen to this very carefully, because they told them that we need to go over there and stop the persons over there before they come here and do us in this country. That's what they're telling them, that you go over there and you put the lid on them, uh, threatening the lifeline of the country, and you have to stop them there in their tracks before they come over here and do that. And look at how in the last 4 years they brought them over here, and they brought them over here and created the Trojan horse in the country by bringing the immigrants in the country who had not been vetted, and they don't even know who's in the country right now. 20 million people in the country they brought in here. Can you imagine how that would make you feel that you are shot up, limbs missing, and so on and so forth, and you done brought the enemy in here through the Trojan horse in the country, and you made this sacrificial effort on your part? Loved ones have been lost and so on and so forth in battle because of what they were told that they would stop it from happening. And then you have this. I'm so mad. I'm so mad. I mean, you look at what they look. So what I'm doing, here's the bottom line. So what I'm doing right now, and I'll be doing the third part tomorrow. I did part 2 today to anticipate the big bang in part 3, where I finally, as I was thinking about it over the years and thinking about it in terms of having seen the tumbling effect of that event in Dallas. You see, you have to continue to watch developments. And what they don't want you to do, and what I was not doing as well as I'm doing it now, the tumbling effect of that, they want, I think more clearly that they want us to see these things as being disconnected. This event, it just happens on its own. That event happens, it happens on its own. Every event just happening, just things just happening. There's no tumbling effect of any of these things happening where it tumbles into something else. And the mistake that I stopped making in this result, I'm writing about it now in part 3 tomorrow, a big bang kind of third part. I did part 2 today, and I wanted to let people anticipate what I'll be doing tomorrow in part 3, because I told them that for the first time in history, I'm going to connect up the dots that no one else has ever done before, and that connecting the dots up is to show how what occurred in Dallas, and what happened in Dallas, by the way, is not been clearly understood within the context of it. We all know that the Warren Commission report is a cartoon act. I mean, it's really comical that we could have. Well, I understand it because I was in college at the time, so I know exactly what was being said at the time that it occurred, and I know how I saw it. I was in political science at that point, and I knew how I took it, and I remember some of the conversations I had on the campus, and where I was with my little dumb self at that time. And I was starry-eyed. I was one who, there was a person that was not starry-eyed that was saying things that I couldn't accept at that time. His name was Jolly Turner, and he was always in the library, and I know how he was saying it. He one of the comments he made. I remember back in that time period, he said that Johnson's guns were still smoking, and I couldn't accept that. Not as starry-eyed as I was, and I'm thinking this guy's a nut. I was seeing him the way he see me today. Well, as the world turned, and yeah, what I've done though, and what I'm doing now is putting together and tying together this tumbling effect of what occurred in Dallas in 1963. It was a tumbling effect because what you had in '63 is really what you had in '60 And then, and what occurred in 63 is a result of that, because what happened in 63 is a result of what happened in 1960. And see, I wasn't seeing the connection between them until I began to look at this. And I've been looking at it for 40 years. So I kept looking at it, but I want to look at it. Wait a minute. And then there's another piece of it, and that had to be figured into. What does that mean? And I put together something now that everybody's been looking at it through a disjointed way of looking at the event. And what I'm doing now is connecting that event up with what is happening right now with this immigration. Because what immigration is about is the same thing that what Dallas was about. And that's what I wasn't getting, is I was becoming and am now one of the persons that understand that Dallas thing a lot better than most persons, even some of the ones that have written about it. Even Mark Lane, who is one of the ones that opened up the door to these conspiracy theorists and so on. And Mark Lane was one of the early ones out there that was challenging this nonsense in the Warren Commission report. Told fiction that they wrote in that there was no investigation made of the Kennedy murder by these 7 government officials on the Warren Commission. I'm just sorry they didn't do an investigation. This murder was not investigated, and it's really something when you can actually be involved in the chain of events in Dallas, and then can set the commission to investigate the people who are to be investigated as having been involved in what occurred in Dallas. But you're going to set the committee up to do the investigation of that committee, and your hand is involved in it as well. That's really something. It's one thing to say we're going to set up an independent committee and let the committee function independent and do an independent investigation. It's another thing for the government to do an investigation of itself. How you think that would come out? The government's going to investigate their own self and find out if there's any role we played in the murder of the president. The government's going to decide whether or not it played a role in it. It's going to be the deciding factor whether there's a role, rather than the third party decide that. Do you think a third party decided that? When you see when you go back there and look at it and see what really happened there, you see the government investigated itself. that comes out well, and they know I'm out here with. I understand. I understand them better now today than I did. This is day number 2 of this article I'm writing right now. So as I was finishing up this book called Myth America, written by Kevin Cruz. Give me a break for some of the things you do with that book. I thank you for writing for being one of the editors of the writing, and I did get something from it, particularly the early stages of the books, reading the book. But when you started talking to me about it's outlandish that the 2020 election would be challenged and so on and so forth, and they were there trying to overthrow the government, and you start writing that kind of stuff, then you really are a useful idiot. But that's what that's what I was getting from it. I kept looking and saying, well, these people, he is a smart man, and these useful idiots, we think of them as being idiots. They're not idiots. They're smart people. They're useful idiots, and not in the sense they're idiots, quote unquote, without the euphemism, without the modification, in that. But it can be used because sometimes your scholarship can be used, and they can use you as an idiot because of the credits you bring to what you're saying. And this man does have some credits because Cruz has been involved in a number of books, and he's well respected among the scholars. I'm reading a book right now. After I finish that book up this weekend, I I'm reading a book right now by Webb. Is it James Webb? I think it's James Webb, and it's about the Scott Irish contribution to American history. And it's very recommended to me. I got to read it before he wants to meet with me, and I want to have read that book before I meet with him because I want to give his book back. So I'm reading this book right now. It's a very good book. I can tell there's a lot of pride in what this guy is writing. He's writing about the Scott hyphen Irish contribution to this individualism, American individualism, and their role in it, and the role they played in laying down the tracks for what became a great country, um, which it still is uh, it's still a great country, but it is a caricature of what it once was. The greatness of the country. See, in other words, the tracks of its greatness have been laid, but a funny thing happened on the way to the end result. The country got sidetracked, and what I'm going to be doing tomorrow in part three, I'm going to be talking about how what happened, how the sidetrack played into what happened in Dallas, and what happened in Dallas in '63 goes back to what happened in 1960 because the ones that installed John F. Kennedy in the election 1960, because he didn't win that election. That much is very clear on the record now. That election was taken from Richard Nixon in 1960. And they thought they got rid of him in 1962, but they lost the presidential election in 1960, and they lost the governorship in California 2 years later. And when Nixon lost the governorship, because they followed him out there and got him out of there, but they wanted him out of there. They couldn't. They could not do some things with him at the helm that they could do if they brought this upstart in there, and he brought him in there, and he became more independent than they thought that he was going to become, and got in there and started doing something they were not going to tolerate. And there were a lot of things in place that were put there during the Eisenhower administration. They're thinking they got this election, this third election of Eisenhower down pat. They're going to have a third term through Nixon. They're going to respect the 22nd Amendment that had been put in to place during the Truman administration. And so the two-term limit was there to ensure that Eisenhower, as popular as he was, would not be there in perpetuity as Franklin Roosevelt was. So they're gonna, but they expected, given the popularity of Eisenhower, we liked Ike, so they thought they're gonna get third term. And the funny thing happened on the way to the election in 1960, and that was the fact they went through a couple of places like Missouri and Illinois, Chicago, where uh, this mayor of Chicago, these power centers, these centers where the machines, these old machines, uh, the, 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 the Tweed ring and those other machines were still in place, and the Daily ring in Chicago is still there, and they were pulling some inventory out and who let the dogs out, and then unleashed it on the public in 1960. What I wasn't putting together was that that's true. The election was stolen from Richard Nixon in 1960. They thought they got rid of him in '62 because they defeated him again in the governorship. You remember Nixon was saying at that time that he thought that was the end of his career. He said, "You won't have Nixon to kick around again." Well, that's the way it looked dismally in 1962. But the man came back, given the turmoil in the country. Came back in 1968 and came back in that chaos that had been created by the Vietnam War. and they were clamoring for him to come back. I mean, he was coming back at a time that we were clamoring for something different because there was too much chaos in the country. He came back and ran on law and order, and people don't want chaos in their country. And they were getting chaos. Johnson's forced to step down. Didn't run. He ran in '64. Johnson didn't run in '68. He was being challenged in his own party. Challenged number one by John F. Kennedy's brother. You go back and look at these events, and so I'm looking at the tumbling here, the tumbling that occurred, and the question that I did not raise is I kept looking at these events, and I'm not seeing them as disconnected because it's too many connecting points and too much overlap going on that it could not be that this happened and that's an isolated area all by itself, and over here this is going on, that's isolated from that. But when I began to see the tumbling that was taking place there, I began to see something that I had not seen before. All these years I've been studying this case. And now I see clearly, as I'm going to prove tomorrow in part 3. I've already written it. I've written it in my mind. I have not written it on paper yet, but when I write it, it's going to be the same type of writing that I did today and what I did yesterday. They will not be writing a counter argument because I'm gonna connect the dots up. So yeah, I'm bragging, right? I'm not really bragging here. I'm just saying I'm gonna try. Let me just put it that way. I'm gonna try to connect the dots so tightly that there's no wiggle room in there where there can be another conclusion drawn. There can be another conclusion drawn, but cannot be drawn accurately based upon the evidence I'll be presenting. Because I'm tying in what happened in Dallas to what we have right now with this immigration that we have in this country. Because what happened in Dallas, first and foremost, what happened in Dallas was the disenfranchisement of the voters. Anytime you take down the president of the United States, you have actually disenfranchised all the voters in the country because that's the only office all the people in the country vote for. We don't all vote for the senators, and we don't vote for any of the senators in another state. And the members of the House are only voted upon by the person in that particular district of that state. So if you want to attack the nation as a nation, you attack it at the point where the entire nation is under attack. Isn't that true? And the entire nation is not under attack until you attack the president of the United States. Do you scholars agree with that? I'm talking to you scholars, you useful idiots who have these degrees. That took me a long time to get to who are the useful idiots, because they're not just because you're using the word idiot as a noun and useful is the modifier. You might fail to understand that these are not dumb people just because you call them idiots. I don't think on the highest level of usefulness, dumb people cannot be used to the benefit of the ruling class on the highest level, because at the highest level, you're now talking about those that if they put their mind to it, they can think out the box for a minute, which is hard to do because your training is inside of a box. And now you got to do some outside conclusion from the training that's inside. And you're so mired in the inside information that you receive, it's very difficult to get out of that box that you're in because you're trained into a box. I know because I was trained into a box myself. I think in undergrad school, when I first started out, I know this. I know this for a fact. I was more in a box in undergrad school. My first year, that was at Wayne, and I hate to give you the year because then I'm dating myself, but the year of that was 1967, and I think yeah, 67, and I went there and got baptized again at the grad level. I'd been baptized already in the undergrad level because I was stunned to find out that a lot of the scholarship is fraudulent in the undergrad. I already found that out by the first test I took in the undergrads because I was stunned. They were in there, in the classroom with their book cheating. I couldn't believe. I'm just starry eyed. So I know how it goes. But I I'm constantly now because I kind of put more time into thinking outside the box. I try to think outside of the box, and my question always is, how would they want those that got us thinking inside the box? And all the scholars, by the way, coming out with these degrees have their thought process trained inside of a box, or you're not going to get a degree. I know what I know what I had to go through to get my degree, and they weren't saying it in your face, but they were kind of like on your papers, writing things back to you and letting you know what was in law and what was outlaw, and you get a sense of where they are and where their scholarship is and things of that sort. And you have to write within the context of their scholarship, but they want you inside of a box. And I was in a box, but I was not in a box of my own choosing. Can I say that? Of my own. It was not my choice to be in a box. I had to recognize first of all I was in a box, and then rescue my own thought process from it. Is what I did, and that's the onus of what I'm writing now in terms of three-part series. I'll be finishing the third part tomorrow, and I'm telling you that what I've done with the events in 1963 is connected to what happened in 1960 with the election in 1960, and I now see that the election, which was taken and given to Kennedy because they thought it was a little bit more of a controllable instrument than would have been under the more seasoned politician under Tricky Dick, and they thought they could do things through him they could not have done through uh, Richard Nixon, who was seasoned and who had. They saw the man how the man could finesse his way into power because they saw that through the speech called the Checkers speech, which was a masterpiece because there were questions being raised by Richard Nixon's honesty at that point, and Richard Nixon was on the chopping block because there was a threat he's going to hurt the ticket, and they were talking about getting him off that ticket because he was a liability to Eisenhower. As well as Eisenhower was liked, Nixon was looked at as a liability, and they were talking about getting him out of there. And Nixon went on TV and gave that speech about his dog, uh, the dog he gave to, what is his daughter's name? Um, I forget the daughter's name, but his daughter was given a poodle, a black poodle, I think it was, and there was some things been given to Nixon that made it look like this man was taking some bribes under the table. And at that point, uh, this book talks about how the country saw at that time they saw this dealing, double dealing, as horrible. And he makes a contrast. I forget who was that writer. He makes a contrast between how the public saw that issue in that time period where taken under the table was a horrifying thing, and then he puts another thing that were doing that wasn't looked at as being as horrible, but taking money and benefiting from it. Boy, that was considered to be the height of betrayal of the public trust. And he got on there and gave that speech and talked about how he had accepted a gift on behalf of his daughter and told the public that I know people are going to even criticize me for this, but my so and so, one of the persons, donated a poodle to a dog to his daughter, and she fell in love with the dog, and he was not going to give the dog back, and no matter what his critics said, and so on and so forth. And people were writing saying, telling him, Mr. Vice President, please stick to your guns here and do not give that dog back just because these people are criticizing you and so on and so forth. Stand your ground and so on and so forth. That speech, the check of speech, got him back on that ticket to run with Eisenhower after all. And that speech saved him. That showed the man had. That speech was great in terms of the intent of it. I wouldn't give a nickel for it in terms of the veracity of the speech. We're talking about, but who's going to put veracity, veracity, in the same sentence with a politician's name? I'm not talking about veracity here. These rascals we're not talking about truth and politicians in the same sentence. But he was able to stay on that ticket, and they saw that, the power brokers saw that this man is a master politician. That's what he is, and that's what Donald Trump is. Donald Trump is a master politician. He keeps saying, "I can't believe you're a politician. You're in the political arena. You're a politician. You're in there dealing with these, I hate to say this word, but there you're in with these dogs, and you got fleas just like they got fleas. But you're never gonna be you're never gonna be part of them, because you did not come through the ranks like they did. And they're never gonna forgive you for the fact that you didn't come through the ranks and pay your dues. And now you're standing out independent of what they had to do to get there. And they don't like you being there because you set up another tone of it. And because you didn't have to pay the piper to get to where you are, but you were paying your own way as you got there, you're a threat to those who had to pay the piper to get where they are, because they all had to do a lot of selling to get there. There's no honest politicians in Washington, D.C. And every last one of them got some treads out there where they got to pay the piper. And they don't want to call the question, because I'm going to be writing, after I get through with this third article tomorrow, I'm going to be calling for an investigation. My little 2 cents. I'm going to be calling for an investigation in this country, because we got to find out. Got to find out who were the ones that controlled that auto pen. We want their names, and we want them in prison. Because you cannot run this country in the back room somewhere through an auto pen, signing documents as if you're the president of the United States. And he doesn't know what's going on, and you're pushing his name in front of the public, but you're back there making the decisions. You're not even elected to any office. These are not office holders. I can tell you right now, no one elected them anything. They're in back of Biden making these decisions. They've opened up the door to all this immigration that you're seeing right now that's raining down on the country. People are asking the question right now, how did 800,000 Somalians get into the same place and develop a corridor of power through which they can get a person like Ilhan Omar in the House of Representatives? This woman not representing the country. The woman is representing the Somalians who put her there. And the Somalians are an outlaw group in the country, and so are they. So is she. And I had to think about, how did all of that happen? Where does this start, and how does this happen? And what I put together here I'm going to when I write it, I already written it in my mind. But when I write it and put it on paper and put it down for the readers to read tomorrow on Facebook, in the third part, I do intend to make it incontestable what I'll be writing, because I think these dots got to be put together and assembled so that the narrative of the story is understood. Because I think that what we have right now, that is, the immigration that we're dealing with right now, is a tumbling of what occurred in Dallas, and it's connected this way. It's connected in the sense that in 1963 there was a total disenfranchisement of the American people. Can we say that without you getting mad? Because when you get a president out of there through the process through which they eliminated John F. Kennedy, they tried to eliminate Trump, by the way, the same way in Butler, Pennsylvania. But they took a man out in '63 that they installed in the presidency in 1960. Because I do contend, and I think the evidence is very clear about this, that he did not win the election in 1960. He lost that election. But then the ones that installed him in there, he got in there and did some things that were not within the vortex of where they were coming from, and these lines that were not intersecting right on that grid. And he was there doing things that were undoing some things that had been put in place during the Eisenhower administration. Go back and read about that. You can read about that in the book by Russ Baker, very good book. And then he has a lot of books in there, the references in those two chapters he has on Watergate. Go and read those two chapters if you don't read the whole book. The whole book is well worth reading. Russ Baker wrote a classic book, in my estimation, called Family of Secrets. Family of Secrets. And he writes this book and connects a lot of dots up to what Watergate was about. Yeah, do they see getting Nixon in '72? Really, Nixon had that election all sewn up in '72. That man ran an election where he won every state except Massachusetts. Got every one of the state's electoral votes except Massachusetts. They had 14 electoral votes. He got 3 electoral votes in Washington, D.C., so 17 electoral votes. Nixon got 520 electoral votes. So you add up the 17 they didn't get, and then the 520 they did get is 1 electoral vote that'd be 1 electoral vote addition because of 530 electoral votes. The 1 electoral vote he didn't get because there was 1 unfaithful voter that, even though he had won the state, that one, what do you call these voters, that would vote a different way than the constituency would have voted, unfaithful. And that person voted against him in that one, I forget the state it was in, but voted against him. So there were 18 electoral votes altogether that Nixon didn't get, but he won. He ran the table in every state. In other words, Watergate makes no sense if you're not connecting dots up, because it's not make any sense for a man that's running the table in the election, and McGovern didn't have any support. You look at his showing during the election, also up until that time period. It's going to be a whitewash one way or the other. They didn't need to go into Watergate and try to find out what the Democrats were doing because they were overwhelmed in the politics at that time. Nobody's going to vote for McGovern. As radical as well, we weren't willing to go down that road at that point. But over conditioning of the population, which is what I see, by conditioning the population over a period of time, you open up some corridors that will not be open if those things not occur. And so the conditioning over time, and but we're talking about here, we're talking about 1972. And in 1972, they're not looking at all the things that would be on. You could look at later on and add that to it. At that time, it looked just like it was a burglary. But why would you have a burglary when you run the election already? And what is Creep trying to accomplish. They're trying to accomplish the election of Richard Nixon. They already the polls indicated the man had no shot. He won every state except one. Get all the electoral votes except 18. So what are you breaking into Watergate for? It doesn't make any sense. What doesn't make any sense? But that's that 6 waves from Sunday that Schumer was talking about. Yeah, Nixon came back in '68. They thought they got rid of him. He came back and won the election in '68. They would that was not in the cards. And they set him up and got him out of there in 70. They set him up in '72 and got him out of there 2 years later by using the fake news media. Yes, it is a fake news media. The fake news media, which has put shackles on his own hands and has incarcerated itself and refused to be free, a free press out of his own volition. It's not. We don't have a free press in the country, but it's not. We don't have a lack of free press because the government is, in fact, making the press unfree. The press is making itself unfree. He doesn't want to be free. He wants to be captured so they can get the payoff that comes with it because they're not patriots that are trying to do the right thing for the country. We don't have no press like that in the United States. That's why Fox, you're gonna, if you don't get back on track to what your mission was and what got you out of the block and separated from all the other media out there, you're not willing to do that. That's what's gonna, you're in for a crucifixion. We're not gonna keep tolerating this half stepping. You were doing some things differently 4 years ago. You're not doing that now. People see the contrast between what you were reporting at that time and what you're doing right now. That's what it turned into Newsmax. I'm just telling you that the dots got to be connected up, and if you don't connect the dots, you won't see what's really going on here. And in part 3, I'm telling you right now, I'm gonna stun the entire nation because I have connected dots to see how what is happening right now starts in Dallas in '63. This tumbling effect has occurred over time to give us the result we have right now. It is an escalation of what occurred in Dallas. Dallas was the disenfranchisement of the American people in the totality of that disenfranchisement because it's through the President of the United States. You cannot disenfranchise the whole people through any other person's elected to office. It can only happen through the president. If you still a mayor election, that's that city. Or you're still the election of the person that's in the districts, that's the location of the House of Representatives. So that's limited to that part of that state. But when you start to talk about disenfranchisement of the totality of the nation, you can only talk about that in terms of the office holder of the President of the United States. And we can understand that. We would not let them get away with this idea of people ordering the president around the United States. I'm calling these people on this. I got to call all the scholars out on this one because I don't hear them saying anything about this. None of them have come out. I never heard them on TV to say the things I said 3 weeks ago. I was saying for the first time in the public. Nobody's ever said it. I never read it. I don't know anybody that paid any attention to it. Way I said for the first time on the air. But I noticed that in grad school. I was looking at the document in grad school. I couldn't believe was before I didn't have the need to point out what it pretended because they had not played the way it's playing out right now, where they're ordering the president of the United States around. We all knew we had a separation of powers, and we were recognizing that a lot more than we're doing it right now. So there's no need for me to kind of come out like I'm coming out today. But I came out when I saw them ordering the president around us, and I knew they could not do that. And I started to say, wait a minute, that the Constitution doesn't allow that because the Constitution does not give the Supreme Court that authority. You can tell that by the way in which the Supreme Court is in fact written in the Constitution of the United States. I'm the only one in the country that said that. But that's the fact of how that document is to be read. Anyway, let me get out of here. But do not forego what I'm writing tomorrow, part 3. I'll be writing it when I later on tonight, getting ready to go up tomorrow on Facebook. I guarantee you that nobody will write or comment publicly to say where the error is and what I'll be writing, because I'm connecting up the dots to what happened in Dallas to what's happening right now through the immigration, the disenfranchisement of the American people, and now their replacement, which is what immigration is really about. Okay, got to get out of here. See you again next week at the same time, same place, at allpointstv.com. Until that time comes, I want you to follow your dream. If you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.